Hello and welcome to From Portugal with Love. I'm your host, Lauren Covis. In this episode, I am excited to talk with David Leite, a James Beard award-winning food writer, cookbook author, memoirist, cooking teacher, and the founder of the highly respected Leite Culinaria. I have been dying to talk to him for a long time now, and I'm so excited to get into all the delicious details behind his life and his work. And with that, welcome, David. I am so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm pleased and delighted to be here.
Thanks. You're a hard man to get down on a time, so I'm so excited it worked out.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's a good thing that you're busy. So I'm going to start from the beginning, and I want to hear about you and your life. So I kind of culminated some questions, and the real big thing that we have in common is that we're Portuguese.
We are Portuguese.
And you were part of the Fall River community.
I was.
The Azorians is kind of where you came from. And I just want to know, to start off, tell me about what your family life, your upbringing was there.
Sure. So I was born in the ancient year of 1960. That was the place to see an age. That was before the brontosaurs and everything like that, brontosauruses. And it was a very tight-packed community. It was a lot of Azorians, mostly that area. Because, of course, you had New Bedford, which was fishing, and ever since really the 1800s, there were a lot there. And then Fall River became really big because it was a lot of the knitting mills and a lot of the fabric mills. So a lot of the women were able to do embroidery and stuff like that. So that brought everybody there. But I call myself a first generation American because my mom was born here. I was born here. Everybody else was born in Portugal, in the Azores. So, to me, it's very traditional in the sense of what I grew up with. So we had what was called a tenement, which was one of those 3-story buildings with, 3 apartments. They were called tenements back then. They're not tenements, but that's what we called them. And it was my grandmother and grandfather on the first floor in the back, my godmother and godfather, and my cousins on the first floor. In the front, we were on the second floor. And so basically meals were just a group affair, as you know. It's just everybody at the table. There's vovoo and there's vovó, and there's vovó serving, your mother serving. Everybody's arguing and yelling and screaming and laughing and talking loud. And everybody thinks Portuguese people are angry. We just talk loud. That's what we do. We just talk loud. And
I'm not yelling. I'm Portuguese.
Portuguese, exactly. And that's what I grew up in. And but the thing for me was I didn't like being Portuguese when I was a kid. I hated it. I hated it.
Yeah, you said you felt less connected to the Portuguese heritage, that you wanted to be more American.
Yeah, I mean, on TV, did you see any Portuguese people? Did you see vovós serving, caldo verde or polvo? No one's eating octopus. They're all eating hamburgers. They're all eating American, mac and cheese and American cheese, and that's what I wanted. So I really was never keen on being Portuguese until, so we moved from there to Swansea across the river, and eventually my grandparents moved in with us because that's what you do. Yep. And when I was 30 or 31 years old, is my grandmother passed away, and I realized all of her recipes went with her. Everything went. Now, my mom had her versions, but they were her versions. They weren't my grandmother's. So her recheio, no one knows how to make it really. She had this chicken and rice soup. It was pink. No one knows how she made it pink, and I've never been able to recreate it. So that's when I started getting very interested in my Portuguese culture and my Portuguese heritage, and that's what kicked everything off. And so in the search to recreate her recipes and to connect to that is when I started going back to Portugal. I started going to Portugal, never went back before, went to Portugal for the first time, learned about it, went to the Azores, went to the mainland, and that's when my identity started to become cohesive. It started coagulating. It started to become. I started becoming who I was by accepting my Portuguese heritage, by accepting being Portuguese, and understanding the culture and the community and all the things that we did as kids. The festas. Who knew what they meant? You just went to a festa because you were going to eat or you were going to play games. And now I started to understand what they meant, and then it started rounding out my understanding of what being Portuguese was. And then that's when all the Portuguese pride started to come in. And I've been doing it for now, I hate to say, I'm 65, so 35 years. I've been doing it 35 years.
So you would say that real turning point of your life and you pulling back to that culture and the food was more so when you're when your Evolve passed?
My Vavo passed, yeah.
Because you really felt like my Evolve is my whole entire world. It's the same thing
Yeah.
in Newark, New Jersey. My family, three-story family,
Yeah.
and when you came from overseas, I'm the first generation born here. Everyone lived together. So exactly what you had was um, my same upbringing. And my mother worked full time. So my grandmother was the one who cooked. And when I wrote my cookbook,
Yeah.
there
Exactly.
was no writing of anything. So I really take that when she passed, her recipes went with her. And like, what are the examples that you had to reference some of this with? Just your mother asking questions? Like, what made you
My
start to pull
mom,
that together?
when my mom got married to my dad, they got married in 1958. My mom had gone for a visit to the Azores. And I think she even had a boyfriend back home. I'm not sure. She was 20 years old. Met my dad, I think, on the first day. He was a bus driver. And so for 3 months, they wooed on the bus. She would go on the bus in the morning. He'd drop her off at night, and that's how they wooed. And so he came to America, she started keeping a journal, if you will, or a recipe book, but it was an old fashioned 1959 telephone book where you put in the name and the address of people, the old days, right? But instead of that, she typed the recipes that she was getting from my grandmother. And then she would add her own. So I had that as a reference point. But my mother doesn't, I'm sure, like with your family, my mother never cooked with a measuring spoon or measuring cup in her life. It's like, no, kind of
Yeah.
thing. So I started making those dishes after my grandmother passed, and they never tasted right. They were never right. So um, I went home, and how my writing career started was I said, Mom, this I think 2 or 3 times she sent me the recipes, and I would make them more over the phone. She'd give them to me, and they never worked. So I said, Mom, I'm going to go home and I'm going to videotape you. So it was the days when we had those big video cameras, and I started filming her making. I don't know if it was stuffed quahogs or if it was soup at the cove. I don't know what it was. It was something, and all these stories started to come out about when my grandfather and grandmother came and what it was like growing up and when she went back to Portugal. And I realized, oh my God, there's a lot of stories here. So I was more fascinated in the storytelling at first, but then in the process of getting the stories, I was starting to get recipes. And even with the recipes I got, I had to keep testing them and retesting them and tweaking them and tweaking them and tweaking them to bring them back to what I grew up with.
That flavor
Because
profile that you could remember, kind
Right.
of.
Exactly, because the recipes were unreliable. Because my mom knew when she's like, cup of beans, cup of rice, but she knew what to do and what to look for. And she never was good about any kind of the seasoning. She just, let's say, seasoned. So you never really knew what was going to go in it. So I cracked the code eventually with the paprika and, of course, I'll do the garlic and the luru and all those things. Then I started cracking it. So then that's when I started coming back around to it. But there are still some dishes, no matter what I do, they're not the same. They're just never going to be the same.
Also, because, and I love the story. I love the heritage. I'm a very proud, I always say, very proud pork chop. Um, but the nostalgia behind a lot of those recipes, yes, you could follow a recipe to a T, but it's never going to taste the way she made it because you were with her, you were experiencing that, and that feeling inside is what makes that. That's why I always make the reference. I can make meatloaf the way your grandma made it, but it's never going to taste the same. And we I call it chef scientists. We break it all down and you figure out. I know my mother can walk in if I was making like canja and I was just sauteing the sofrito to start.
Yeah.
She'll be if I was to go grab something, she'd be like, "No, it needs another 2 minutes." And I'm like,
Yes. How do
How
you
do you
know?
know? How do you know? Because you know." And I to a T, I have a notebook that's written with all the recipes and index cards,
Yeah.
and it just has a dash with like sal, piment, and I'm like, how much? I don't know.
Right.
You you do it. So I just find it amazing because through time and like my family's from the north, more country
Mm-hmm.
side, and I always refer to our food as very peasant food
Mm-hmm.
and very homey and the stories behind it. Like if you were talking to your grandmother and she was talking about the chickens, there was a story behind it. The neighbor walked down and da 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 da. Da.
Everything had a story.
And that's, I feel like, the lost art. And I think that's something you definitely in your career have capitalized on is bringing that to life.
Yeah.
I love this quote. I thought it was funny. It says, while National Livestock and Meat Board categorized beef into 45 different cuts, it's all just meat to my mother.
Yeah.
And that's like what I was just saying, like peasant food, you had the carne with the fat because we were going to make rejoin. So, but it was just the meat.
Yeah.
And you went to the freezer and it's all in Ziploc bags as the meat. So,
Yeah. Exactly.
to us, it's more of the purpose of the meat when you cook it. But I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, it's true. Like my mother, when she would write recipes, it could be for pork, it could be for beef, rarely lamb. It would always be
No.
two carne, carne,
Got it.
carne, carne the what? Carne, carne. You know what it is. And I'm like, okay, all right, mom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, when you got the video camera out and
Yeah.
you started doing this, first of all, was she on board?
Yeah, yeah. My mom's a ham. Yeah, she was totally on board.
Okay.
Loved it. Yeah,
My mom's a ham too, so don't worry. I got you. Do you still have those videos?
I do. I still have the videos. I still have her book. I have all of that. Yeah, I have it all.
We did a video for like a totally different thing. My dad was my first producer.
Yeah.
I made latria for a English class as a cultural thing to explain
Yeah.
desserts and culture. And he had the camera on a tripod. We bought the hat at the dollar store, and I'm making like latria, but the camcorder. So like it's always been there, but it's just so funny. And when they found that, my husband, my kids had a hoot with that one.
Yeah, they went to town on that. Yeah, exactly.
So you started your career off doing advertising, copywriting, and then you decided culinary school?
Yeah, and I didn't even go to culinary school like you did. I went to the French Culinary Institute and also the Culinary Institute of no French Culinary Institute, and then it was Peter Kump, and it became the Institute of Culinary Education. But I took all the avocational classes, so I must have taken, I don't know, like 80 or 90, 90 hours of classes, but not in the professional program. And how it started for me was I was in advertising. I had done like Bill Clinton's advertising. I've done Chevy, IKEA. We launched IKEA in America, but I got bored after a while. I had done it for I don't know how many years, and how the food thing re-entered. See, I was young, thin, and beautiful at one time, way back in the day. And so my husband, who when we were dating, I was eating practically nothing. It was a bowl of cereal for breakfast, a sandwich at lunch, and then I would have a bowl of cereal for dinner. That's what I had, and I looked fabulous. And then one day he says, I'm going to bake a cake. And I'm like, knock yourself out, knock yourself out. So he baked, and we think it was a pineapple upside down cake. And he said to me, I was going to say it in Portuguese, he said, do you want to lick the bowl? And I'm like, yeah, why not? I licked the bowl, and I had one of those Proustian moments because I remembered my grandmother, the taste of my grandmother's cake batter. I had forgotten it entirely. And I'm like, you're making my grandmother's cake. And I think it was just a plain vanilla cake. And I'm like, this is amazing. And so I very quickly abandoned being young, thin, and beautiful, and I just started diving into baking. And so I studied with Nick Malgeri Nick Malgeri from the Institute of Culinary Education. He was at Peter Kump. I took his baking program, and I never stopped. And from that point on is how it started. And then the Portuguese kind of folded in not too long after.
Food, Portuguese food.
That's it. And then I became, and so my first article was writing about taking the camera and filming my mom. And it was for the Chicago Sun-Times. And then I wrote a bunch of articles for them. And then it went to the LA Times. I wrote for the LA Times, New York Times, everything. But that's how it started out. And so it wasn't like a real professional going to become a chef in the kitchen, but it was learning how to cook properly. And so once I did that, I stopped advertising. I went broke. I became a food writer. And I was thinking, well, I've always done so well with everything else. I'll be so successful at this. Little did I know success meant practically no money because no one pays writers. And I'm like, oh boy. And then I had started my website, and that's how the career took off. And then I eventually gave it all up, advertising, anything else, and just focused strictly on writing for publications and writing for my website. Yeah.
Do you think when you were in the culinary program, like because of growing up and around food, that you had like an upper hand? Like going in there, you felt confident? Like some people go to culinary school because they think it's going to be fun.
Right.
Or like, oh, I love to cook. And,
Yeah, I
when you
know.
really do, it's really very different when you
Very.
go in there. And so I walked in with a lot of kids that were very green. And I felt confident when I went in. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know how to like dice an onion? You don't know how to do those kind of basic things.
So I didn't have technique because my grandmother, my grandmother chopped an onion. She was like a ginsu, a
Like
human
this.
ginsu knife. Yeah, and she's like, and there's the onion, there's the garlic, there's the clove, and but I knew my way around ingredients. I knew, what to do. It felt like putting on a very well-worn glove. I felt like I was
You
wearing
felt comfortable.
felt very comfortable. I never felt out of place. I was a mess. I'm not a neat cook. I still am not a neat cook. I never got the whole thing about the waste bowl and clean up your station. I'm not. That's not me. Never has been. But I
Clean
felt,
it, clean as you go.
yeah, that's not me. That's not me. It looks like a cyclone in the kitchen when I'm done. But I just felt like I liked being around the machinery. I liked being around, like, whenever I see a beautiful like pie dough, I'm like, this is, I belong here. This is my currency. This is my currency. Or salting, pieces of beef or lamb to cook, or even make a refogado when you're taking the onions and the garlic and you're slowly caramelizing them. It just felt, this is where I belong. This is me. This is what I'm meant to be and do. So it always felt like I was going home to myself and go home to my history when I was taking those classes.
The way you just described that is beautiful because I have an older son, 15, and he'll always be like around me in the kitchen. And sometimes he's like, why are you smiling? Because there's nothing going on. I just have music on.
Yeah.
But I really do. When people ask, like, do you love what I beyond love what I do? You feel it like in this gut feeling. And it's just, there's pride in it. There's
Yes.
excitement in it. And for me, it's really how I show you I love you. It's
Yes.
really
Yes.
how I make you feel so important in my life. Like
Yes.
good things, bad things, but that's what food is. And I think that the Portuguese American culture, where I am a little bit younger than you,
You're
and
a lot bit younger, darling. Be honest, you're a lot bit younger.
but I worked very hard for all these curves. And you let me tell you something.
Good for you.
I never
You
going back
own
to
me.
skinny. But I think that in my house, the Portuguese, they're not yelling. They're just, we talk loud. We're very emotional. We're also not the most hugging, like warm embrace sometimes. We're
Really?
tough and we're rigid.
Wow.
And
Really?
my mom, the soup, the food, the dinner was the way I love you was set. And like the bolu that was made in the cake dish was
Thanks.
like,
Thanks.
like that made you feel so good. And that's what I try to make other people feel with my food.
Mhm.
Um,
That's
so
interesting. Because see, with my family, it's huggy, touchy, feely. You wake up, you kiss your mother, kiss your father, kiss your grandfather, kiss your grandmother. You see your aunts, uncles, you kiss them. You see your cousins, you kiss them, you hug them. And even I remember being a kid, and even when I would get in trouble, my mother would put down a dish of something, slap me in the back of the head, and said, "Come, querida, come." So you get the slap and the love at the same time.
yeah,
It's just what.
my mom would, she always tells the story of the Chanela. She would just, as soon as it went in the air, I mean, that woman had, my grandmother has aim like nobody, my father used to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I want to jump back into this. After spending years of writing some
Yep.
pretty amazing national publication,
Mhm.
when I was doing my math, I want to say you were late 30s, you started Late's Culinaria.
I did. I did.
What made you do this? Like, what made this come? Because the internet wasn't real.
The thing
No.
does not. I remember. I mean, this is the old days of, go to https:// www. That's what you would tell people. So this thing I thought was really interesting. This internet, and I had written a couple of pieces, and I thought it made no sense to me that when you pitch magazine articles, you have to write the editor with your idea and pitch, which is fine, and then you have to attach all these clips. So a bundle of stuff you'd have to photocopy, and because being anal retentive, it had to all be full color for me and everything, and it was costing me a bundle to be able to do this. I thought I'm going to put this stuff on my website. I'll create a website, and I'll tell them, go to the website and look. You'll see everything there. The editors thought that was dumb and stupid. They're like, well, how do we know you actually wrote that for the LA Times or whatever? And I'm like, because I did. I'm not lying.
Right.
They didn't like that idea, and I thought, well, to hell with you. I'm just going to keep doing it because I think it's really a neat thing. And then people started finding me. I didn't even know that this is back in the day. I mean, I don't know how
You
old
had to search.
this this was before Google. This was before Alta Vista. This was like there was like something called Mama Spider or something like that, and Lycos I think was one of them. And people would find me, and I'm like, oh, how did you? This is great. And they go like, I love your recipe that you posted for I don't know Culinaria or something like that. My grandmother made one that had beans and pork and this and that. What is it? Can you give me the recipe? And I'm like, sure. And I started researching. And back in the day, you couldn't research online because it didn't really exist. So I'd be going to all these libraries and going through cookbooks. And then I started posting those recipes. And then more people came. So again, with Portuguese cuisine, it's what brought me to myself, and I kind of became who I am because of Portuguese cuisine. I started my writing career because the first few articles were all about Portuguese cuisine. I started my website because of Portuguese cuisine. I got my first cookbook, my only cookbook, because of Portuguese cuisine. Portugal and Portuguese food has been very good to me. So it was always what started everything. And then once I started understanding that, oh, there's other people besides Portuguese people who might want recipes, I started just putting my favorite recipes that I was making that had nothing to do with Portuguese online. And then it built, and that was 1999 when I launched it. So it's 26 years, going on 27.
Yeah. Did you ever think, I mean, yeah, 26 years, that would be what it is now, especially because the internet was such a new thing then.
Yeah,
People weren't doing that. And I was looking through, yeah, you started, you have everything. You have a little bit of everything.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and I mean, nowadays, yeah, we can Google any recipe, but I
exactly.
think that there is the ownership of 26 years. And when you first started, there wasn't just, let's Google how to make pão de
Yeah,
queijo. Like you had to test
yeah.
the recipes, I'm assuming. You had
All of
to,
them.
and I've heard you are a,
I'm
let's,
fanatical about
and
that.
isn't it funny? Like I find it ironic because didn't have your grandmother's recipes.
No,
You're trying to capture this Portuguese feeling and taste that you grew up with.
yeah,
You're dedicated to put those recipes out there. You got to test and figure it out each
exactly.
little thing.
Yeah, exactly. I never thought about that. I came from such a loose environment like you did, where it was
Yeah.
just creativity. But you know, that doesn't always translate. I remember when I started the website, there was a recipe that said separate the eggs, blah blah blah. First, a person wrote me and said, "Okay, I have them in two different piles on my counter. What do I do?" And I realized this reader thought, take four eggs, put two here, put two there on the counter.
Yeah, you have to.
How could you misread that? And I thought, oh my gosh, some people really, really don't have any idea. Or the other one was, okay, I want to cream the butter and sugar like you say. How much cream do I use? And I thought, oh my, I didn't realize that you could misinterpret it that way. And that's when I said everything has got to be tested within an inch of its life and has to be made extremely, extremely clear. So at one point we had 150 recipe testers on the site. It's just,
Wow.
and everything got tested. And I still have now, I think about 10 excellent testers who will test everything. But right now, what I'm in the process of doing because of Google and AI, I have to go back to all the recipes and make them work for the current environment. So there's not a lot of new recipes being added, but anything that's added always is tested at least 10 times by me twice, by my testers, like with 10, and then I'll come back to me and I'll do one last test because I need
That's amazing because yeah, the interpretation of someone reading instructions and
exactly.
I'm not a recipe follower because I love to read a recipe as my guideline. And
Yeah,
sometimes I explain that, like, even I wrote a cookbook. And yes, that cookbook is so that you can feel confident and comfortable. If you decide that you want to tweak and shimmy this way, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah,
But that's why I always say I'm not a baker because I can't be precise like that because
yeah.
I'm like, well, let's change it. And then it
Oh
doesn't
no,
come out. You can't.
no
So
baking.
I think that's amazing. But like, through the years, your recipes really speak to people.
Yeah,
Like they have a reference point. They know the credibility is
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Do you feel that with the 26 years of this site, you've had to pivot and grow dramatically, or have you stayed true to what you wanted to go with?
No, I call myself the Madonna of the food world. I've reinvented myself so many times,
Okay.
because in the beginning, I didn't even have advertising on the site for the first 10 years of my site. I thought it was a fun thing to do. And then all these like kids came along with blogs and had ads on them and they're making fortunes. And I'm like, I'm not making any money. So there were lots of pivots throughout the years because for me, it was about originally just Portuguese cuisine. Then I realized there were a lot of people who didn't really know Portuguese or want to make Portuguese cuisine. So I started adding other recipes. And then when I started taking classes, I fell in love with everything handmade. So homemade puff pastry, homemade croissant dough, homemade brie, everything was homemade mustard, homemade mayonnaise. So it was all about that. And I realized a lot of people are not going to take the time to make homemade puff pastry when they can buy Dufours, you know?
Right.
And so I thought, okay. So then I started switching more to like more simple, not switching, I kept everything, but it started adding simpler recipes, you know, and then the 30-minute meals, which I said I would never do. And now at 65, if I can't get a meal on the table in 30 minutes, I'm not making it. You know, I'm too busy. So as I grew as a person and I grew as an adult, and I saw what people liked, I just kept on adding to it. And for a long time, I was adding lots of vegan stuff. I stopped that. I'm sorry, vegans everywhere.
Yeah. No.
You're wonderful people. You're
Yeah.
wonderful. It's just, I know that if we were on a desert island somewhere and it was just me and vegans, there would be one less person. It'd be the Portuguese would be the first one to be eaten. I know it. I know it. I know that you would. You know, so I stopped doing that because I don't
Our
have.
garden is nice and flavorful.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have a connection to vegan. So if
Yeah.
it's not naturally vegan, I'm not going to try and go out of my way to do that. So yeah, I keep on pivoting and now, you know, doing a lot more video, which I've always wanted to do, but you know, you always think, yeah, when I lose 10 more pounds or this and that, and 20 years have gone by, and it's like, it ain't going to happen, baby. So I started doing more video, audio, podcasts, reading my essays as a way of just, people digest food in a lot of different ways. Some people like to watch it being done and never make it. Some people like to hear you talk about it, but they don't cook. Some people want to cook along with you, so they want to take classes. And I thought, okay, why should I dictate how you should consume my content? So I try to make it as available to as many different people in as many forms as possible.
But being open to do that pivot and to grow, especially the way you've realized your audience has been changing,
Yeah,
I think a lot of people get set in their ways
yeah, they do.
and they think, you know, this is it. This is the way it should be. And if you're not open-minded, because there's so many people in the world and how fast we've been growing and
Yeah,
all the things that are at the tips of our fingertips, like
that's right.
that's why 26 years has been successful, because
Yeah.
you're willing to do that change.
And now with AI, I mean, I don't know about you, but a lot of my colleagues of online publishing, they're throwing up their hands and giving up. And I'm like, don't you understand? You didn't live through the internet when it first came out. This is even bigger and better and more exciting than when the internet came. Think of the things you can do with AI. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
And get people more involved in what you're trying to tell and the story. And I think that the story and the culture that you bring to life in your writings
Yeah.
is amazing, because I think that's what people, it clicks and they relate. I
They
don't care if
do.
you're Greek, Italian, Spanish, Chinese, like everyone has that family, that culture. And I think that I was reading through a lot of your stuff and I said, first of all, you're James Beard Award winning for the best website 2000, and then you published your first book. It was the New Portuguese Table: Existing Flavors from Europe's Western Coast.
Yeah,
Then you did a memoir.
I did.
I mean, like really all different, all over the places, but they all come back to you. That's
Food and food.
food and you and the Portuguese culture. What do you think it was like introducing that Portuguese food to Americans when you started?
How I'm glad you asked that because everyone's like, oh, Lisbon, I want to go. Portugal's great. Oh my God, it's one of the best destinations in the world. When I started, no one cared about Portugal. Nobody wanted to go. Nobody was interested in Portuguese cuisine. And I'm like, you don't understand. The food is simple, it's delicious, and it's riddled through with life and tradition and culture. You don't and yeah, it's not going to compete with some of the Michelin restaurants out there or some of the best restaurants in Paris, but it's not trying to. That's not what the food is about. And it was a long, long, long time before people started understanding it. And also, Michael Benavides of Portugalia Marketplace in Fall
I
River
love Michael.
said, I do too, I love him. Michael
He's
said,
good hair too.
doesn't he? Oh, gorgeous hair. Oh, so that Portuguese hair is just so
There you
gorgeous.
go.
And he said, you were preaching before anyone was even listening. You were like 10 or 15 years ahead of your time. And it's like, yeah. And so now I'm so thrilled when people are going to Portugal, people write me, people I don't know, and they go, I love your website. I'm going here. What should I do? What should I see? What should I taste? And I think that's incredible that it has now become a destination for food lovers.
It's the hottest traveled, it's the most traveled country right now across for Americans and Canadians.
Absolutely.
I start all of my like talks or any kind of stuff I've been doing with the book.
Yeah.
My first question, who's going or who's been to
Yeah.
Portugal?
No,
And it's either one hand or the other.
no.
And people are like, oh my God, I had no idea how beautiful it was. But I love the way you explained the first word out of your mouth with the food. The food is simple.
Yeah.
It's simple and it's real food. And I think that's why when people go, even if you're not a huge bacalhau person, if you're not, you can find things where it's rice, meat, potatoes, but it's done right with good olive oil and salt and
Yep.
lemon. The ingredients that build the recipes, we have really good quality
Yes.
in there. And there's so much pride in that's why I think the food, when people go and try it for the first time, like, the food was amazing, or the linguiça, or the chorizo, like
Yeah.
they're just so impressed by it. And I'm thinking to myself, my grandmother used to rinse out the casing in the well in the back,
Yeah.
and then she would turn it. My grandfather would take all the seasoning in pots. I'm like, I've known how good this has been for years.
I was born into it, this and my family. Yeah, the joke with my family is my father, when he was alive, made wine, and so my father made wine that my aunts used to put in the chorizo. So my father would take the chorizo, and also he'd also make pimenta moída. So or a masa de pimentão. They would use that sometimes. So everyone's contribution was amazing. So then we'd use the
Oh,
chorizo that had my father's wine and garlic in it in our dishes, and I can't imagine not having grown up that way, being
Oh,
so connected to the earth, to the food, to the family. And I hear people talk about their heritage, and they're like, oh, well, no, they're very American, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love being an American, but it doesn't go back to the old country. There's no long connection. There's no thread that takes you back through generations. Where at least with my family, there was it's stuff that my grandmother made, her mother and grandmother made, and it connects us. And I would never give up having lived in a house with so much chaos, because everybody was coming over. There was always some cousin getting beaten up by someone else, or beating someone else up, or coming over, or one aunt coming over with food because somebody was sick and you had to go to or some grandmother
they
brought
just show up, knocked on the door.
always, just constant. It was like Grand Central Station all the time. And like our apartment was the place where anyone from Portugal came. For the first month, they lived with us.
That's like my dad. So once they got on their house,
Yeah.
whoever was coming, we took care of them. They had a
Exactly.
room, they got fed till
Yeah.
he lived with his cousins.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, my parents were neighbors in Kearney,
Oh yeah.
and my grandmothers set them up together.
Are you
And my
serious?
and my mom wanted nothing to do with my dad at the time. He had to work real hard for that marriage,
Wow.
and they've been together. Oh my God, 40 something years.
Yeah.
Can I get a little personal?
Yeah. Of course you can. Absolutely.
So, after all that success in 2017, you published your first memoir,
Yes.
Notes on a Banana.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting,
A good title.
yeah,
I was
memoir
gonna,
of food, love, and manic depression.
yep. I was going to call it Happiness Backwards, because there's an element in the book where some psychiatrist wanted me to spell my name backwards, and I'm like Eetildibad. And he's like, what? He said spell this backwards, and for some reason I was able to do it. I can't do it anymore. I could spell anything backwards, and I thought that's a nice title. But then I realized no, it's right in front of me, and it's about food. Every day, my mother would write on a banana for my father, Manny, I love you, Jesus loves you, have a nice day, and put it in his lunchbox every day. Now we're talking 1965,
I just got, woo, okay.
way back. And then when I was kind of old enough, like 7 or 8 years old, we had a snack bar. My dad built our house. And so there was back then snack bars were the big thing, not really kitchen tables. There was a snack bar. And then every day in my place was a banana. We love you. Jesus loves you. Have a nice day. Good luck on your exam, or whatever was happening that day. So I grew up with my mom leaving notes on a banana. And I thought,
I love that.
wow, that's so family. and also notes on a banana, notes on a crazy person. Bananas, you eat banana, it's food. So I thought that's going to be the name of the book, Notes on a Banana.
I that to me, that is amazing. Um, Now, do you feel that the conflicting identities of the Portuguese, the American, being gay, being in a conservative family, like that was what you internally fought with all the time
Yes,
and couldn't find yourself in essence, I want to say?
exactly. And it all came to a head kind of with starting to cook Portuguese because the last thing I wanted to do is be gay. I mean, I would pray every night to God that, oh my God, please don't make me gay. Please don't make me gay. And then I was Portuguese, and I didn't want to be Portuguese when I was younger. And like through all of high school, I just wanted to be American. I knew that something was wrong with me. It was diagnosed as bipolar. They've since changed the diagnosis, and I'm not bipolar, but I have mood issues, and I just knew all these things were wrong with me, and I thought I need to overcome this. I need to find a way. I need to find my way out of this, and
Yeah.
so I think by chipping away, by accepting, the first thing was accepting the gayness. That took a long time. But about 28, 29 years old, I started to accept that. Then the food thing happened with my grandmother, and I started to accept my heritage. And then it wasn't until I was 38 or 39 that I was diagnosed with a mood disorder. And and then it's like, okay, all the pieces now. The puzzle is not put together, but none of the pieces are missing. My job now is to put those pieces together. And so from then until now, it's been about putting the pieces together and finally seeing the big, beautiful picture that it is. But it took a long, long time to understand.
The underlining thing, though, the whole time has been the food
Food.
and your
Food is
family.
it's
And you
what
know,
yeah.
and it's really funny because the most important thing, listen, I can be on any kind of platform and speak about being Portuguese in my family. The thing I take away from it, and the most important thing that I do with my two children and my husband is I want to bring it back to the dinner table.
Yes.
I want, I was not ready to be a mom. You're not ready to be a parent. I didn't know. I always say at the end of the day, I'm going to screw them up anyways,
Yeah.
but I'm going to love the crap out of them.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I realized that people were not doing that I was surrounding myself was no one was sitting down and having dinner together.
Yeah.
And that was calming. It was the center, was the food in my life that made me find my own identity, find my own voice, find out how I could bring people into my life. And it's really that's the little niche. And
Yeah.
I think that having that family tie is what in all the different areas brings everyone together is the
Yeah,
food.
it's like the hub of a wheel and all the spokes lead to it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I'm not someone who can sit down at a meal and be there for 3 hours. That's not me. I gotta be,
Depends if there's wine. If there's wine, I could sit there for a little bit.
I jump up, I gotta do something, but the act of cooking, and you know that you're bringing all these people to the table. You're bringing all this energy, all this creativity to the table, and you said it's how you show love.
Hmm.
I remember when 9/11 happened. We were in the city and we couldn't get out. It happened on a Tuesday. We weren't allowed out of the city until Saturday. The first thing I did was I got all these ingredients, and anyone who was in New York or who was up here in Connecticut near us, I invited them all over. All I knew how to do was to cook, just cook. And I think families and groups of people who understand that, I think they have a little bit of an edge
Hmm.
because I think it's an opportunity to talk. It's an opportunity to just enjoy, an opportunity to take a break from all the craziness. No phones are allowed at our tables. We never have our phones. We do not allow that. And even though, like Alan, my husband, he could stay for hours at a table, I just got to get up. But it's just it. I don't know. It kind of resets everything. It's like this nod,
Yeah.
this
And
flip.
it's not always good. It's not always good and happy because
No,
sometimes I always say you find yourself with the people you are at the table because even if you're having a bad day, someone's going to pick you up. If you're having a great day, they're going to support you. You want to hear the stories we do with our kids, like tell us about your day when they were real little. Like that's how it started.
of course.
Now it's so habitual in our house. But yes, no phones, no TV on. You
Yeah.
know, even growing up, dinner was every night at the table with a tablecloth,
Yeah.
china. There was a salad, the bread was on the table. Like it was, a meal. And even if my mom got home at 6 in the morning, she knew she'd be home late. The pork chops were sitting with salt in the basin.
Absolutely. Yes, same with us. And my father had this rule that we had to sit down. There could be no money on the table. And I'm like, why? He said, because Jesus was betrayed with money on the table. You can't have that. So there was no money on the table. There was no distractions on the table. We had to start with a prayer, and then we would talk. And then it was done when my dad got up. When he was going to get up, that's when dinner was done. If we wanted to stay an hour, nobody got up. We just sat.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it was just a huge part of my life. I mean, and I'm glad I had that, because, if I'm here alone and Alan's in the city and I eat in front of the TV, I don't pay attention. Not him. He will light candles, sit at a table, put music on by himself.
My mom does that. I think sometimes it's mind blowing. I'll FaceTime her. She has a glass of wine. She's sitting at the counter. She has and I'm like, Mom, what are you eating? She goes, she was like, oh, I grilled a piece of salmon. I did some broccoli, Rob. I go, you're just by yourself. I'm going to enjoy my meal. Like,
isn't that wonderful?
It is. And she'll baste it, do the garlic, like the whole, and I'm like, my husband's working late. I might cut some meat and cheese up. And
exactly. Put it on a plate and watch Jeopardy. Yeah.
Shut the brain off for 5 minutes. But it is. I think there's such a pride, and they just so enjoy it that it brings that happiness.
I agree. It's a wonderful thing.
I want to ask you a quick fire question to kind of round us out.
Sure.
I think it tells a lot. If you were to introduce someone who is totally unfamiliar with Portuguese food, 3 dishes that they had to try to understand our culture, what would you tell them?
Pork à la tinjana, pork and clams, absolutely. Caldo, absolutely. And then the third one, I've never been asked about 3. I've always been asked 1. If there were the third one, I think it's an Azorian carne asada. Carne asada. I think that kind of covers everything, the seafood and the meat that the Portuguese do, how important kale is to the culture, and also my mom's carne asada, because it's my mom's carne asada.
Are you love bacalhau, or you're like, I could take it or leave it?
Okay, here we go.
It's one of the big, Michael Benitez, we talked about it, the Portuguese kids we've talked about it. Everyone has this.
I can take it and maybe sometimes leave it. My husband is Portuguese by consumption. That man will eat bacalhau every single day of his life if I made it. Me, if I have it once a month, I'm okay. Now I like it like in bolinhos de bacalhau, or bacalhau com natas, I'll eat that. But bacalhau com chá or bacalhau brás, I'll eat. But just like a piece of, my father would have bacalhau, it's a piece that had been cooked, olive oil.
Cozido. Just con couves e batatas. My mom always did an egg on top, and I love raw garlic.
I won't eat that. That's like, what about you? Where do you fit? You're probably all the way.
Oh, I think bacalhau is our mascot. I love it. I love explaining it to people. I grew up with the bucket in the garage at all times. So, I can do it all the time. Actually, literally 3 days ago, my mother just landed. They have a house in Florida. They go back and forth.
Right.
And I stopped over to drop something off to her. She goes, here, take this. She made petanishkas. So I just had one little piece. It was soaked in the freezer, took it out. I'm like, Mom, you've been home for 4 hours. What do you? She already made them. She fried them. They were perfect. My kids were going to grab them. Like, that's not for you. Grandma made something for me for once. Walk away.
It's funny. It reminds me of my Aunt Irene, Irana. Every time I'd see her, she'd go, David, como está? Oh, David, estás gordo. Queres comer? Estás gordo. Queres comer? I love that. You're fat. You want to eat? I just cracks me up. And then
my grandmother all the time.
And on the table is, the patanishas, the bolinhos de bacalhau. Our treasures are different than yours. Ours are very different. They'd be there, anything, rice, everything. It's always cracking me up. You're fat. You want to eat?
My kids, we were just in Portugal, and they couldn't believe that French fries, potatoes, and rice. I'm like, don't come if you are going to worry about your carb intake,
exactly.
because you're going to swipe the plate with the bread at the end too.
I mean, really, rice and potatoes is our God-given right.
French fries too. Don't forget the French fries. Everything comes.
Are you from the Minho region?
No, from Mortosa.
Okay.
So around 30 minutes, 40 minutes outside of Porto.
Okay.
But yeah, my grandmother's still there. My couple of I love every part of it.
Yeah.
So did I miss anything? What's next for you?
Next, I'm doing a culinary tour. It's called the Cook's Tour of Lisbon
Oh,
in May with Sagres Vacations. I think you know
okay.
Sagres.
Yeah.
And I'll be doing that. But in December, I'm doing a Cook's Tour of Florence. I'm taking 10 people to Florence. So I'm kind of doing these culinary tours, which is good. And that's like the biggest, newest thing for me is the
I
culinary.
think you're going to do so great with that because you appreciate and love the culture, even Florence or
Yeah,
Portugal,
I just
where
love.
you're going to tell the story of why these foods are so important and why they come together. Because at the end of the day, it's all of our nonas and avós that
Yeah,
built that menu and that culture there.
that's right. That's the big thing for me.
That's awesome. Well, I just want to tell you thank you, David. I've been dying to talk to you. And
Pleasure.
listen, I would love some point for us to get in the kitchen
I
together.
was going to say I would love to do a couple of episodes, kitchen
Yeah.
filming it. I would love that.
Yeah. I would definitely, I'm right
I
there
love
with
the
you.
one that you did with the Portuguese kids. That was very funny. Crack.
I love them because they made me feel like I am not an outsider. They, when they started, before I like really got into them, I was like, there was a video he put on with the Chanellas and the track pants,
Yeah, yeah.
and the guy he takes his pencil and he licks it, and I go, oh my God, that's exactly
Yeah.
like every detail, and it's so funny because they're so culturally pinpointing so many details, but it's
I,
hysterical because it's just hysterical.
yeah.
No, they're great. Um, Tell our listeners where they can find your next projects and your info on you.
Sure. If they go to Leite's Culinaria and the shortcut is lccooks.com. So think Lucky Charms Cooks. So
Oh, that's
lccooks.com.
good.
It takes you right there. That has all the recipes, what I'm doing. My Substack is listed on there. All of my social is listed on there. I'm on FaceTime. I'm on Facebook, TikTok,
Good.
Instagram, all of it. And that's
All the
what I kind of it.
platforms.
Yeah,
How many people Americans pronounce your last name wrong?
everybody.
So when we were looking and I was talking to like the producing part of it, and they're like, I was like, I can't say it wrong. It's late. It's milk.
Yeah.
And go figure. You went into food.
Nobody says late, except the
Late.
Portuguese people. They'll
Yeah.
say late. But everyone says light, lighty, leady. Nobody says. My father chose leet because when he came here, there was a couple of other leets. They weren't related, and they pronounced their name leet. It's like,
Leet.
okay, that's what I'll do, but it's light. I mean,
Late.
light. And with you, how do people pronounce your last name?
Covis.
Kovish, not Kovish.
Golf, yeah, if the Portuguese will do that. But and when I spell it for people like in customer service, I'm like COV as in Victor, AS, even though it sounds like it's an IS.
Yeah, exactly. I do LEI as in ice, T as in Thomas, E as in
Yeah,
because they'll just write it all.
it's we get the names will get butchered, but that's okay.
Totally, totally.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Loved it. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. This has been From Portugal with Love, and I'm your host, Lauren Covis. This podcast was produced by Curious Monkey Entertainment. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on all of our social media platforms at Chef Lauren Covis. Also, please remember, until next time, savor the moment.